This week on the Unpopular Opinion Show.
You'd be surprised how many people don't actually research people that they interact with, that they bring onto their platform. He violated an agreement that Bill Cosby had.
Okay, so that sounds illegal as hell, for one.
Call the police and go in the house, right? Like, right? Like, why are you going to stand there and have a shouting match with an idiot? Bro, don't leave your house like ever. Just stay in the house and shut up. I'm going to pay for your stuff, or you're going to cause, financial harm or financial damage to me.
I think you need to say clearly what happened.
Who gives a fuck?
I don't care if you personally hit Candace Owens and her stanky
Cray.
No good thing starts with, I was thinking about my ex.
He ain't learned his lesson. That's a brother ain't gonna learn shit.
I know this is gonna be unpopular and I don't care. Let's keep this shit funky.
Yo, what's unpoppin'? How you doing, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Unpopin' Show. That suggestion came from a family friend. It was right there. What's unpoppin'? How you doing? In any case, welcome to the show. I'm T Storm, joined by, as always, my brother, my partner in crime, DJ Mike Swift. What up, famo? What's unpoppin' with you,
brother? What's happening? That family. What's unpoppin' is the person who made this suggestion, family friend who is joining us on the social media side, and that was the first suggestion that she made to help it grow. And the second suggestion was to remind everybody right at the top of the video to subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment if you love what we're doing. If you hate what we're doing, leave a dislike, and then be gracious enough to leave a comment and tell us exactly why you don't like us.
Yeah, for instance.
Because T want all the smoke.
Why the nigga still got a flat top? All that. I take all of it. All of it. Come at me, bro.
Tonight's show, or today's show, whenever you're watching it, is special for two reasons. One, this is the first show of season 2. So we've completed the year. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for rocking with us for the whole year. Shout out to Soul Star Music Lover who picked up the 100 on the 100 for 100. We're looking into the next goal setting gift. As soon as I got that locked down, I will communicate that to the group. And the second reason tonight is special because we are joined by a special guest on the phone or in audio, Miss Phylicia Pearson.
Hello, everyone. Hello to the host, the gracious host. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for being so understanding. I was explaining to them that I had a zoo of a day today, and ladies, it's more than just hopping on camera for us. So I was explaining to them that I just couldn't get it together, and they were so gracious. So thank you for the invite, and thank you for being so understanding.
A turn.
No, it's our pleasure. We understand you're very busy.
Yes, we have sisters, and I have a wife and mom, and I understand very clearly what you mean by that. So it's all good. Thanks for being here with us, though.
Of course.
Now, in terms of a bear of a day, so what I want to do is give everybody some brief background on who you are, and then we can jump in and talk about why you're here and get into some juicy conversations. So I found this description of you online, and I thought it was a perfect way to kind of introduce you to our audience and bring you into the show. Phylicia is a fierce litigator and warrior for her clients. She's a former prosecutor whose current experience ranges from general civil litigation to criminal defense. She believes that diligence can create triumphs in even the most challenging of situations. She provides diligent representation and effective advocacy in every matter she is assigned.
Thank you. Thank you for that description.
I mean, that's just a thorough.
Look, I wish I could take credit for writing it.
I know exactly where you got it from. I won't drop that. But I do have to say I'm highly impressed by the fact that you did some level of research. You'd be surprised how many people don't actually research people that they interact with, that they bring onto their platforms. It's interesting. So you're diligent. I appreciate that.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. Like I guess I'm kind of known on the show for the guy who does the digging. I'm always digging to find out more. So I was watching pocket watching, I think with JT. He mentioned you. I went over to your channel on YouTube, and I was super impressed. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing on YouTube, and then from there we can jump into some conversations. Obviously, we want to talk about Bill Cosby. And T.I. and Tiny and some other things that are happening out there.
Oh, alrighty. So my channel on YouTube is called Empowered Esquire TV. And my tagline is Life Lessons Through a Legal Lens. So we get really wrapped up, you know, as a society in pop culture and all these celebrity cases. And I really wanted to have a platform where we discuss the law behind these cases, because when it comes to the law, T.I., Tiny, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, whoever, they're really the same as you and I. And we're all under this same legal system, and seeing these cases play out with these celebrities and having these conversations where it could be a teaching moment. It could be a learning moment for us to learn the law behind, you know, what's going on in our society. So I decided to take the pop culture cases, break down the law, turn them into little lessons for my viewers, and then have conversations about the law via the pop culture current events.
Okay. See, over here, we talk about those same things. We laugh at them a little more and give our opinions. But I did want to get the legal side of it, because often our conversations will drift into that direction. So let's talk about Cosby. Let's talk about what's going on. The news broke last week that he was released. I think if you know, you're watching this and you haven't heard that, you're living under a rock. So he is physically out of prison at this point. And the case was overturned. And I was watching your live last night, and somebody took issue with it being called a technicality, but it was overturned because the DA didn't. They overstepped. Can you explain what happened?
So we don't know the details of what the agreement was, but what's been released is that there was an agreement between the prosecution and Bill Cosby initially when they began their investigation as to, you know, what happened in the incident. So we're assuming that that's back in 2005, they made this agreement, and then prosecuting him with this event now in 2018 or whenever they initiated the prosecution. It violated the agreement they had with him back in 2004, 2005. So if you were to make an educated guess, you could only assume that perhaps they had agreed to grant him some level of immunity for him to discuss the incident with him or something of that nature. And then when this new DA came in and they decided to prosecute him, they were violating the agreement he had with the old DA.
So it throws out the thing that he was convicted for.
Correct. It overturns the conviction. So the current DA, he's calling it a procedural issue. That's what he's referring to it as. But the former DA and the press, they're saying that he violated an agreement that Bill Cosby had, and by prosecuting him, and that's why the conviction got overturned.
Question. So, because it's my belief, okay, so that sounds illegal as hell, for one. Would Bill Cosby be as far as, like, is there what's the word, false prosecution lawsuit that can come out of this of some sort, or false imprisonment, or any type of, you know, retribution?
Potentially, he could potentially file a lawsuit for malicious prosecution, you know, pretty much saying you were aware that I have this previous agreement, and you thinking that because you're the new DA, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You violated an agreement that I had. He could, of course, do that. But the issue with, you know, suing for malicious prosecution is that it's a high bar. You have to really prove malicious intent. And so I'm sure this new DA could very easily say that he was perhaps unaware of this former agreement. You know, a lot of district attorneys' offices are still very much on paper. They usually have very limited electronic systems and things like that. So I'm sure he could easily defend himself by saying he wasn't aware of this argument. It was buried in some file somewhere, and that when it was found, that's when he became aware.
Was this issue brought up in court, or they prosecuted him? The agreement.
To my knowledge, it was not originally brought up, but it was brought up in the appeal. Now, like I said, that's to my knowledge, perhaps it was, but I think they only brought it up, and Bill Cosby's defense attorney brought it up in the appeal, but I don't remember it being an issue at the original trial. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why that wasn't something they discussed then. I'm not sure on why they made that strategic decision.
So a lot of people kind of have, a superficial understanding of what happened, right? Like they kind of boil it down to very simply, he did it or he didn't do it. He said he didn't, or he said he didn't do it. And it's obviously so much more complex than that. Can you talk a little bit about the circumstances under which he would even be talking and admitting to anything?
Absolutely. So this new DA who actually prosecuted Bill Cosby, because as we know, the DA who was actually in office back when this incident occurred in 2004, that DA actually declined to prosecute. So the person who was there when all this happened, he decided not to go forward. This new DA said that after he came into office, he was able to unseal some deposition testimony from the civil case. So what that means is that this victim, her name is Andrea Constand, I believe is how you say her name. She actually sued Bill Cosby in civil court. And in the civil case, they had depositions, which is where you have an examination before trial. You go in, you're sworn in. So it's the same, penalty under a perjury if you misrepresent or tell something that is not necessarily the truth during your deposition, right? So you're still sworn in. She was sworn in, she had a deposition, and Bill Cosby was also sworn in and had a deposition. Originally, these records were sealed. A lot of times when you have a case in which there is intimate assault and things like that, as part of the accusation, the court will seal those records because there's privacy concerns when it comes to, that type of accusation. Well, apparently this new DA, he filed, I'm sure, what were probably lengthy motions to get that deposition testimony unsealed. He then got the deposition testimony unsealed, reviewed it, and he believed that it could be used as proof that Bill Cosby actually did do what he was being accused of back in 2004. So now the new DA gets the unsealed deposition testimony, and he uses that deposition testimony as a big part of his case, and then decides, okay, you know what, now I have enough and I can prosecute Bill Cosby.
And the deposition was in a civil case and not a criminal case.
Correct. It was a deposition in a civil case. And the reason why he can do that is that there are very few exceptions to the fact that usually when something happens outside of a case and it's any type of prior testimony and things like that, usually you can get that rule to be inadmissible. But when you have an actual defendant speaking on what occurred in your case, you have what's called an admission. So it's an exception to hearsay. It's an exception to a lot of your usual rules that would bar prior testimony and have it just be too prejudicial for it to be in a case. So I'm sure he was able to argue, Judge, this is admissions by the defendant himself. It's not hearsay. It's not anything that's overly prejudicial. And we should be allowed to actually admit it and use it in this prosecution.
So, and I'm sorry, I am absolutely fascinated by the law, right? Like I miss my calling. So that was like the smoking gun, right? But
right
in the criminal trial that he was convicted of, were the older complainants allowed in, like the people who say that he, how do I dance around this using YouTube language? He provided illegal substances to them outside of their knowing. The people who said that happened years ago, under which the statute of limitations had lapsed, was their testimony allowed in the trial where he was convicted?
Yes, it was. So I actually spoke about this past Sunday on my channel, where we kind of went in depth with being able to bring in prior acts, quote unquote, prior bad acts, which is what they're called in the law. So again, yet another one of those very rare caveats. If individual A is being charged with doing something on July 6th, you cannot use something that person supposedly did on July 5th, or July 4th, as evidence that they did what you are accusing them of on July 6th. That's the usual thing. But whenever you have someone allegedly doing something over and over again in the exact same way, it's an exception to that because it's called modus operandi, which, you know, in slang, you may hear people saying, oh, that's his MO or her MO. That's where that slang comes from. So modus operandi says,
it's to prove that there's a pattern of behavior.
Exactly. Modus operandi says this person has a pattern. They have a mode and a method in which they continue to commit the same act, the same crime over and over again. And because it's a pattern and it's obviously their mode of action, you can bring in old stuff and use it when you're prosecuting them for this new incident.
So, okay.
So they use one of those exceptions.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. He wasn't convicted of any of those accusations. No. To the best of my knowledge, none of those accusations even rose to the level of charges being filed or him being taken into court. So it's all just allegations. That is true.
And modus operandi includes that in the exception as well. It does not, now it can be prior convictions, right? But it does not have to be prior convictions. It can be prior alleged bad acts. Yes. And so they use that exception to bring in, I believe, 5 or 6 other accusers who testified that the exact same thing that Andrea Constance said had happened to her is what Bill Cosby allegedly did to them.
What exactly?
So the defense attorney in that case has to, they have to fight and challenge every single one of those people who allege something. They basically have to attack their character. Because there's no proof that any of those things happened, but those things are really being treated like proof in court.
Right, that is correct. And how you show about it, or rather, I'll say how you could go about it, right? As a defense attorney, is you first want to attack the argument that there is a pattern. You first want to attack the argument that this could even be modus operandi. So before you even get into the character of these women, you would try to point out certain distinctions that would mean, hey, this isn't modus operandi, right? This happened in different locations. This happened in different ways. So first, you try to attack the fact that any pattern is being established. And then you get down into, okay, now that I first argued to you that there's no pattern, second, I'm going to argue to you that these women are not credible enough to even establish a pattern if there was one, because they're not credible witnesses.
Okay.
Okay, I feel like I'm hogging the conversation. You got it, T. Go.
You know what? I wanna shift gears, and talk about an incident that just recently happened, in, I believe it's Mount Laurel, New Jersey. There was an incident where there was a Caucasian gentleman yelling racial epithets at this black man who was just simply telling him to get away from his property. Are you familiar with the case? The incident?
I think I may have heard about that, but I don't know all of the details. So you would have to fill me in a bit on the details and then shoot your question.
So the white dude seems to be a little inebriated or whatever the case, but that still doesn't excuse what he did. He's jumping in his brother's face. He's cussing at him. He's calling him all types of names. Racially charged slurs. In fact, I'll play a little audio from the incident that went viral over the weekend.
Yo, you want to know why I'm going after him? I don't care. I don't give a shit. So why you here? I don't give a shit. So why you here? Then get the out of here then. I don't give a shit. Put your hands on me one more time. Oh, you put your hands on me. Come close. Hold on. Come close. Right there. I know. Right there. That's right there. The rolling jerseys. Back up. Come close. Back up. Keep backing up. Back up. Don't touch me. Keep backing up. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Vito, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Bastard. That's right. Yeah. My parents are both dead. Yeah, right. What the fuck? My parents are both dead too. And what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Nothing. What you gonna do? Nothing. All what you do is harass all people. That's all you know how to do. You're taking all the fucking money. Well then shut the fuck up. You shut the fuck up, monkey. White monkey. What a You're right. Get the fuck out of here. You can't do it. Touch him. Touch him. That's all I want you to do. Touch him. Suit up for you. Touch him. That's all I want you to do. Touch him. I know better. Oh, good, you know better. Get the out of here. I got you 3 times. I don't give a Don't worry. I don't give a about you. That's called assault. Out of here. I'm going to wait for the cops to show up. That's called assault. Yes, wait for them to come here. Wait for them. We will. Yes, keep waiting.
So the cops finally get there, and he goes on.
Just like I told the Mount Laurel police, get these fucking monkey out of here, and you can't do That's me talking Wait, that's where I live. Come see me. So you're real comfortable. So get me on video so you know what you see. Bring whoever.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, White, why are you back over here?
Well, somebody called me.
Someone called you. It's private property. You have no jurisdiction here whatsoever.
I do
None.
when somebody calls me.
Hold on.
I need back up.
You know what?
Bro.
Hold on.
Back
Go ahead.
up.
No.
Back
I'm going to
up,
let you
right?
do your thing. Go talk to these Go ahead.
Stop.
You go talk to the let them know what I'm all about and what their rights they have.
All right. You want to go back to your house? I'll come back to you.
No, I'll stand right here. It's common property.
Okay.
Have a nice night.
You guys from 11 Oh, yeah. How's it going?
I'm going to let you guys get an education right now.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'll do my job. Right?
No problem.
Who lives at 1101? Who's calling? You guys want to step in and talk? Or?
So they complain. They make the complaint. That happened Friday. That went viral. Monday, you can search it. His name is Edward Cagney Matthews, and he now faces criminal charges for heated confrontation, including alleged harassment, biased intimidation, over which the cops arrested him. As they pulled him out, first of all, he gave his address, and so a bunch of folks showed up protesting in front of his house. And as they dragged him, as the cops walked him out of his house to his car, they pelted him with everything they could, including a Black Lives Matter flag, which I applaud. I'm glad he got a little Black Lives upside his head. But he was arrested.
Oh,
Mike?
I think this story is new to me as well, Phylicia. He was mentioning it to me. T was mentioning it to me a little bit before we started. That's the first time I heard the audio. So I have a couple of questions. Did this occur at the Black gentleman's house?
Yes. Right in front of his, in the path.
Why didn't he just go in the house?
He was on his property. So there had been previous complaints about this dude harassing other Black folks in the neighborhood as well. That's also part of the story as well.
Call the police and go in the house, right? Like, right? Like, why are you going to stand there and have a shouting match with an idiot, right? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, so I don't know what your question is, T, but my question would be, Phylicia, and I know you don't have a whole lot of information on this. This is new, but at some point, does that argument go from harassment to mutual combat?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because that is actually the reason that a lot of kind of minor assault cases and minor harassment cases end up getting thrown out. Because a lot of times, by the time the police show up, it has escalated to the point where it's a mutual confrontation. And so, you have 2 people having a confrontation. Maybe this person did show up initially and begin the confrontation. But once the police arrive, they see 2 people in a confrontation. Usually what they do is arrest both people. And so eventually the case just gets dismissed because 2 people are being prosecuted for having a mutual confrontation. So I do recommend that if someone is on your property and you feel threatened by them and you're outside, I do agree with Mike that you should, or excuse me, that you should go into your
Mike
home
is fine.
and call the authorities from inside of your home. Now, yes, there are some people who would say that's unfair. It's my property. I'm not saying what's fair or unfair. I'm saying the world is unfair. And if you want to avoid it looking like you're having a mutual confrontation and you and the other person getting arrested, it's probably best that you stay inside your home.
So Jersey doesn't have some form of stand your ground. Like, I mean, Florida and Georgia have these sort of I would imagine on your own property, you have the right to tell somebody to get the hell off your property.
Yes, you absolutely do have the right to tell someone to leave your property. But that is different there's a difference between telling someone to leave your property and engaging in a confrontation / conflict with them, right? So if someone's on my property and I come outside and I say, you need to leave my property, at that point, I have warned them. I have told them to leave my property. Now, if there's a stand your ground law, I can take further action. I can take, physical action because that law is protecting me. But if you're in a jurisdiction where there isn't a law like that, you should go out, do a verbal warning, please get off of my property. And then if they don't listen to the verbal warning, get the authorities involved.
What does he face? So in the bias, intimidation, and harassment. What does that charge bring? I mean, what does that actually mean?
So harassment and intimidation, depending on what level of harassment was charged, it's at the most a misdemeanor. I mean, I have never seen a felony level harassment or intimidation, right? Hey, maybe it could be something new. It could be something I've never seen before. But from what I have seen, when you're talking about harassment and any type of intimidation and that kind of conflict, it's usually a misdemeanor at best. And what will typically happen is that they'll have a back and forth with him and his attorney. He'll agree to stop doing what he's doing. There may be some type of order in place that says he has to stop coming onto that property. And then he'll probably plead guilty to some type of violation or some lesser charge.
So, and I'm glad you outlined that way, because here's what I see, like the public outcry with the protesting in front of his house. How much, and maybe you don't know in this case, but just kind of in general in the day and age of social justice warriors and all of that kind of thing, how much do you believe social outcry, public outcry affects how the DA charges?
Awesome question. It affects how the DA charges, I would say, anywhere from 70 to 90% of the time, right? You will have a case that probably will not be charged, but once you get social media involved, it ends up being charged because DAs, as I explained on my channel this past week, a district attorney is usually an elected position. So when you think about it that way, you realize that a district attorney needs people to vote for him or her. So if you have your constituents on social media saying, I want this person charged, yeah, that's going to influence whether or not you charge them if you want to keep your job. And not only does it affect how a case is charged, whether a case is charged, it also affects how a case is disposed of. I won't go into too much detail about particular cases, but I will say this. When I was an ADA, I saw certain cases that were disposed of quicker than other cases because it was a case that had gotten some social media attention. And it really greased the wheels, and we have to get it moving. We have to get it moving because we want to be able to tell social media that we handled this. Whereas usually that kind of case would probably languish for years on end.
Wow. I had no idea. I mean, that public pressure actually works. I mean, you see it play out, but I didn't.
Public pressure does work. Yeah. Wow. It works.
That is a very scary double-edged sword, right? Because in some cases, all of the shootings of unarmed Black men over the past few years, we obviously see public outcry kind of move the needle in those regards, but it can also move the needle in a direction of somebody being prosecuted who's innocent, or a case being taken on where, it's, yeah, you can charge it, but how can you prove it, right? And once a person's name is put out there and drug, even if you beat the case, you can't beat being put out there as a potential criminal, or like you've done something torrid or wrong.
So one of my questions, so did public pressure have anything to do with R. Kelly being in the position that he's in right now? Because he skated for years.
Well, you never know as far as whether or not public pressure caused the actual indictments that were handed down. But what we do know is that the federal government has admitted that they were investigating him for years. They've admitted that they were investigating him back when he beat that original state case in 2002. They were investigating him then. So yeah, maybe public pressure may have been the reason that they ultimately did indict him, but they were investigating and looking at him for years and years and years. And I make a big point of telling people, when you're on the state's radar, it's best to never be a part, to never be a defendant in the criminal justice system at all. Because once you're on the state's radar, you're on the feds' radar. They're kind of one and the same when it comes to being on their radar and being watched and being investigated and things like that. So you really want to avoid pretty much ever being a defendant. And when Mike was talking about, the fact that it's a bit scary to know that public opinion does sway DAs, that's part of the reason that I decided not to be a lifetime prosecutor, to move on and go do something different, because I was not pleased with the fact that it was something that should be considered. I honestly think that the criminal justice system should be totally impartial, totally neutral, because I think it is dangerous to have public opinion swaying those decisions.
Mm.
Look, R. Kelly couldn't have done himself any favors by doing that Gayle King interview.
Oh my God. That's my favorite interview. That's my favorite R. Kelly track. Are you kidding me? You're trying to kill me!
That interview was classic. I'm sorry, but that interview was gold. It really was.
Wonderful.
You should put it out as a record and name it I Did It. Right? Like
it was gold. It was gold. I'm still using it today. Whenever people try to get me to admit something, I'm like, no. That was in my way past.
Right. Yeah, man.
So interesting. Can we play hypothetical?
Sure.
If he were your client, what would you have told him? Right? Like, do the interview, but don't say these things, or bro, don't leave your house like ever. Just stay in the house and shut up.
If R. Kelly was my client, I would have told him not to do that interview at all. I mean, what you just said, don't leave your house, that would have been my advice. Don't leave your house. Don't say anything. Don't talk to anyone, and let's just hope that they forget. Let's hope that they forget about this. That would have been my advice. I don't think that interview was a good idea. I think when it comes to any type of gossip and accusations for public figures, the Beyonce approach is the best approach. No matter how insane the rumor is about Beyonce, she never responds. That, in my opinion, is the best way to handle it. Because when you don't respond, there's no fuel to the fire and people move on.
Yeah, but he was caught.
You know what? I didn't realize that. I never thought about it that way. But no, Beyonce never says anything about it.
Yeah. Nah, she keeps it quiet, super quiet. I mean, remember when Jay-Z allegedly got punched in his face by his sister? She was in the corner not saying nothing. Too far there.
Because she knew there was a camera. She probably knew the camera was there. I think Solange just didn't care. But I believe that Beyonce behaved the way she did because she knew they were being recorded. She thought, let me just stay out of this.
I'm not even here. Just, yeah, that's y'all over there. That's what, yeah. Go ahead. Meanwhile, Solange was left writing them.
But you know what? That's an interesting point, right? Is it like, I think about, Hollywood life, celebrity life back in like the 80s and early 90s, when people could do stuff and it was just rumored. Someone heard it, or there were maybe an eyewitness or two. Now, should everybody just assume that they are always being recorded?
I would say so. I would say if you're a public figure, you should assume that you are always being recorded. And quite frankly, even if you're not a public figure, but you're someone with a certain type of ambition, you have certain types of goals. I mean, quite frankly, I was that person. It's still joked about amongst my sorority sisters and my college friends, because I was that person who was always looking around, like, let me check, because I know what my ambitions are. And I need to make sure that I'm not being recorded, right? So if you have any level of ambition when it comes to, the law, government, anything like that, you really should assume that you're always being recorded, and you should always conduct yourself a certain way.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to play a clip for you. which is not necessarily a legal thing, but I think there's a legal angle to it that should be addressed. So I'm going to share here. Give me one quick sec. Share sound, optimize video, share. My computer telling me I need to do upgrades. That's wonderful.
So
here we go.
I look at it in two ways. So I personally feel like that person has taken me from one space or level in my life to another. So I'm forever grateful. And I also, in the same note, feel like if I was to ever be in the space that I could repay in any way, shape, or form, that I would. You know what I mean? But and the other side of me is like, you can't take it back anyway, so it doesn't matter because you've already placed me at this space. So it's like, yeah, unless you want me to fake be with you to keep my shit, then let's just be friends, and it didn't work, and that's that. But you got to continue to, you know, your credit is gonna get messed up. I don't know.
Have you seen that clip?
I have not.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background before we get into it. So the young lady speaking was in a relationship with a gentleman for 4 years total. 2 of those years romantic, intimately physical. And during that time, he elevated her lifestyle financially.
He took out the project.
They broke up.
Sure. This is a way to say he snatched her ass out the projects and put her someplace with running water and a nice bathroom.
I see.
I'm trying to do YouTube dance language, T. I'm trying not to get us.
Let's go.
All right. So he elevated her lifestyle. She purports that during that time, she assisted with his business. And primarily, she helped him get a $50,000 deal to help grow. I think he has nightclubs. He owns nightclubs.
He owns nightclubs before.
Now, they stopped being...
Be clear.
Yes, all before her. So they stopped seeing each other. The relationship petered off for 2 years. And at the conclusion, she said to him that you need to continue to pay for my lifestyle for at least 3 months. And she asserted that if he didn't, she would ruin his credit, tear up his things, burn down his stuff. Right? Just a nuisance. Right. So this gentleman continued to pay her $5,500 a month apartment and $1,000 a month car lease for 2 years, which I think if you do the math, that's right at like $180,000. Obviously, people were outraged. This went viral. Everybody was talking about it. But T and I talked about it about a week ago, and I think he asked the question, you know, basically she's asking for alimony. And I said, no, it's not alimony, it's palimony, right? Can you talk a little bit about palimony and what type of recourse does a person have if they find themselves stuck with this human being that was never their wives and they're paying essentially under duress? Like, I'm going to pay for your stuff or you're going to cause, you know, financial harm or financial damage to me.
Terrorists.
So you are correct when you, you know, before I even get into answering, I have to say, I'm very surprised by this. I mean, I know that there are some very unique setups and situations in intimate relationships, but this surprises me. I have to say that. Wow. Okay. So yes, it would be palimony technically, but it wasn't awarded to her by any court. So it's not legitimate palimony, right? And this sounds to me like some level of extortion. But I have to add that if he chose to continue to pay these things because his name was on these things, because she mentions credit. So that makes me think that perhaps his name was on the lease, perhaps his name was on the car. And you have to bear in mind that if he chose to continue to pay these things because of his own credit status and his own credit score, then it's no longer any level of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not extortion, but that other word, exploitation. There you go. It's no longer a level of exploitation there, right? Because he's choosing to pay these things to protect his own credit. But what I will add to that is, if his name is on the lease and if his name is on this car, whether it's leased or financed, he had legal rights. He could have went to whoever the property manager is, whoever the leasing company is, and said, hey, I'm a co-leasee or a co-lessee on this lease. I no longer want to be a part of this lease. How do I dissolve this lease? What do we do? Is there a fee that I need to pay to get myself removed from it, right? There are steps that you can take. And the same steps could have been taken with the vehicle. So if in fact his name was on these things and he was paying them to protect his credit, he could have saved the money and just took the legal recourse to get his name off of these things.
Mm. In other words,
get your shit, and get out.
You were waiting to use that soundbite, weren't you?
That.
He had that soundbite ready. Like, when is it going to be applicable? I'm just waiting.
Me.
So yeah, his name was on both.
Okay.
And to add insult to injury, she's in a new relationship and has been in the new relationship for the better part of the time that the old gentleman was paying things, and the new gentleman moved in and he lives there, and they're both kind of, quote, stacking their chips so they can come up.
Yeah, he should not have. He chose to do that. I have to say, he chose to do that. There were things he could have done legally to remove himself from those documents and not. Maybe he thought she would give him another chance. Maybe he just likes to throw his money in the trash can. I don't know. But he chose to do that. He did not have to sit there and pay for those things.
Physical.
Now I've heard.
You know, maybe that was part of the arrangement.
Go ahead,
I'll keep paying, but you gotta drop them drawers off from time to time when I come through. You know,
maybe there's more to it.
Yeah.
She said that wasn't the case. I think she might be capped, but
because otherwise you throw her out, and that'd have been I would think any normal human being would be like, this doesn't benefit me, and I'm not that nice. Get the hell up out my spot.
Right. You can have your name removed from a lease. Like I said, he has legal rights. He could have gone to whoever manages the property and said, we've had an issue. I no longer reside there. I need to be removed. There are things that you can do. So he really chose to pay that. And it leads me to think that there might be some details that were missed.
So question, if he, let's say she's staying there, she breaks up, she gives him this ultimatum. He says no, and he wants her out of there. Can he just bounce her out of there? Can he go in on a Monday and say, you got to get out of here, and get her out of there on a Tuesday? Is that like unlawful eviction?
Right. So it doesn't necessarily work that way, where he can just show up on Monday and say, be out by Tuesday, right? The first question you have to ask is, what exactly is stated within the lease? So is it a lease that has her name and his name? Because now, like I said, he has to involve the property manager, the landlord, the property management company, whoever actually is operating that building. He has to involve them if her name is also on the lease. But let's say it's only his name. It's totally free and clear. He is the person that is listed as the tenant. Then he has more rights there, right? So now he probably, because she wouldn't leave willingly, we're assuming, right? So I'm sure he would have to, first he would have to just notify the landlord, hey, you have this person living in this apartment and they're not actually me. And I am the person that you actually lease the apartment to. And then that would allow the owner or the property management company to make their decision as to whether or not they want to proceed with an eviction or whether or not they want him to go to housing court and have her booted from the apartment. But either way, there were steps he could have, there were definitely options that he had, but it depends. Is it a lease that only had his name on it where he really could have her totally removed? Or is it a lease that had them listed as both parties on the leasing agreement?
I believe they're based in New York, right, Mike? And with that being, it's virtually impossible to be evicted in New York. It's some steps. I've had to Yeah, I've helped my mom get rid of some tenants at some point. Like, it's a lengthy process. So then there's that. So,
right. I have to agree with that.
All right.
Shifting gears.
All right, one more question on this, and I'm gonna let hold on. Let me ask one more question on this, T, and then I'll let you shift gears and I'll let you have it. So I live by the phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mm-hmm.
For people getting into these cohabitating, I'm going to pay for this stuff for you type of relationships without getting the marriage, which essentially is like legal protection. What can you tell them to protect themselves from finding themselves in these types of situations?
Well, I have to say before I answer this question, because I am a woman, I'm not telling anyone, I'm not telling any man to do this, right? But this is just what I know. The men that I know who pay for things for women have the things in their name. So, for example, I do know a man who is paying for a Mercedes-Benz that a woman drives, but the Mercedes-Benz is in his name. So if for some reason something were to go awry, he can recoup his property very swiftly. So, the only women that I know who have their name on something that is being paid for by a man is a woman who is a wife. And I'll leave it at that.
And I feel like that's how it should be, right? Like, dinner's fine, gifts fine, a trip or two fine, but I mean, if you're paying the rent and you paying the mortgage and the car note and the bills and the entertainment, just marry her, right? Like,
really,
you got the bill, you might as well get everything else that comes with it.
But it honestly seems like there is a serious commitment phobia epidemic out here where people would rather have children, that's a forever commitment. People would rather do everything else with each other besides get married.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Don't get me started on children and the laws with men losing children in divorce and all of that stuff.
That's a lengthy conversation.
All night.
And child support. Yeah, I plan on covering that on my channel at some point. Yeah.
Let me know when you do. I'll get in the chat and I will contribute because I am on the receiving end of that.
Oh boy.
Still. And and I'm still a little bit bitter, but it is what it is. Every time I write that check, I grumble just a little bit.
Oh, man. Yeah, I know both sides of it. I know a woman who I'm actually close to, and I think she's a doll. I love her to death. But she is raking her baby daddy over the coals with that child support, and she is heartless about it. She's like, well, this is it. So I have seen both sides of it. On one end, you do want to contribute to your child, but on the other end, it's like, man, when it's affecting that person's ability to live, you have to ask yourself, what good is it really doing?
Here's what I don't like about it, right? Because I agree with you. And I think if you have children, whether within the confines of a marriage that falls apart or, out of wedlock, you should provide for your children. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I would never say that anyone who doesn't provide for their children are good or righteous or doing the right thing. But here's what I don't like. I don't like that it's essentially debtor's prison, right? If I don't pay, then I can go to jail. There is no instance that I'm aware of anywhere in the United States where if you don't pay a bill or a debt, that you can be thrown into prison. As a society, many, 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 many years ago, we said that's a bad idea. But if I miss payments or if anything happens, they can first take my license, then they can put me in jail, and the money still accrues. I lose my ability to pay it, but I'm still on the hook for it. So I get out of jail, and now I'm $15,000, $20,000 in the rears. You can never really truly come back from that. It's an insane situation to me.
Yeah, it really is something that is currently set up in a way, in my humble opinion, in which I don't think there are any winners. I don't think the mom or the dad wins, or even the child, with the way that it's currently set up. And, my biological father Man, I think he's maybe, by the time that I turned 18, which I went to college, so it probably ran until about 21. I mean, my biological father was, when I last checked it, over $60,000 in arrears, right? But it depends on, he never even bothered to pay. But it depends on where you are, because certain states, if you don't pay, like Mike was saying, you will have repercussions. But there are some states that are very lackadaisical in their effectuation of child support orders, and someone, can really get away with never paying at all. So I think where we could start with making it a better system, quite frankly, is to make it something that's federally regulated. Because you have one state where it's like, it's like you're dealing with the Nazis with the child support, and you've been unemployed for a couple of months because you got laid off and it's still racking up, right? And then there are other states where you go the child's entire life without ever paying and nothing happens to you.
Right. And I think both extremes are horrible. But I frankly, I don't know the answer to the problem, right? But as a person who is on the receiving end of that, you don't really get a good night's sleep, right? Just knowing that you're, especially if you're somebody who lives check to check, you're one bad decision or one bad day on your job away from going to jail.
Yeah.
Right. It's terrifying. But anyway, I'm done hogging the conversation. T, it looked like you had something on your mind. And Phylicia, we won't keep you much longer. I know we've had you on here for a while, but it's like you started and then everything's just started going.
It's fine. You've been so gracious. I'm willing to give a little extra time. Ooh, what happened there? A little extra time in exchange for how gracious you were with my audio appearance. I was choking on nothing. I don't know what happened there.
Nice.
You should have your water or your coffee.
Right.
I always have my water with me, and I actually don't at this moment. And usually I have.
So you can tell I watch your content. I watch the shows.
I stopped drinking on the show because I got drunk one time and it wasn't fun. Actually, it was fun, but I say some stuff I probably shouldn't have said. Any case, all that being said, with COVID right now, I have a question about the vaccine. So, there's a lot of people that anti-vaxxers or whatever you want to call it, or taking the wait and see approach right now, or are waiting before they get the vaccine, which is fine. Personally, I got vaccinated. My entire family did. I know Mike, he went and got his as well. It was a good decision for me and my family, right? And then there's other people that take an approach, like I said, they'll wait and see. But for people that are employed in certain companies or state agencies or city agencies or whatever, I believe at some point, some of these employers may make it a condition of your employment to be vaccinated. Is that something that could happen? And if it did, what does that present to people that are like, I don't want to get this vaccine, you can't force it on me?
So I believe that not only will employers start to require that you be vaccinated, but that to travel both domestically and internationally, you will have to have proof of vaccination. I think we will get there at some point. Now, when that will happen, I don't know. And legally, they have every right, and by they, I mean the government, state agencies, and even private companies. Private companies have even more so of a right because they have more leverage, right? But any company, any entity, agency, whomever, they do have the right to require that their employees be vaccinated. So the words that we use when we talk about COVID-19 are essential. The reason that you hear them constantly saying the pandemic, the pandemic, the pandemic, is because whenever you have a pandemic, the CDC can start implementing all of their different regulations. And really, the CDC has a lot more power than people think. And so a lot of the regulations that have been implemented by and through the CDC, right, and then, of course, ratified by by Congress, pretty much state that whenever we have a pandemic, all of your rights when it comes to your person go to the wayside, because the general welfare is to prevent that pandemic getting out of hand. so they can use those regulations. It's the same regulations they use to tell you that you have to stay at home. And a lot of people were saying they can't tell me that I can't leave my house. Yes, they can. The minute they start calling it a pandemic, yes, they can, because those CDC regulations say you're a person as far as what you do with your body, where you go, your travel, and even when it comes to certain levels of interaction with other people, they can start to tell you can't interact with a person who's high risk, right? You can't go and see this person or that person. They have higher levels of control when there's a pandemic.
Wow. If somebody had asked me that, I would have been completely wrong, because I did not think that they could force you to get a vaccine.
Or you can just quit the job. I mean, you can just quit the job, or you can just not travel.
Fair enough.
Because we will get to a point where you will have to be vaccinated to work, and you will have to be vaccinated to travel. We will get to that point. And they do have the right to do that because it is a pandemic. We exchange a lot of our personal rights for the quote unquote protection provided by being under the United States government. And with that comes a lot of things like, as I said, general welfare. So when you have a pandemic, they step in and they say, remember, we had that exchange? Well, now I get to pull that card. Some of those rights are going to get taken away because I am trying to promote the general welfare.
So what do you think has stopped them from doing it thus far? Just general public perception of that type of move?
Mm-hmm. What stopped them from doing it thus far, and I always say in my humble opinion, is people freaking out. That's it. They know that we're in the age of information, we're in the social media age, and people are going to freak out. And I believe that is the only thing that is stopping them from doing it. They're going to kind of gently massage and, talk about the vaccination here or there until they believe that it's a little bit more acceptable. And then they'll start raining down with the regulations. And I think a big part of why they haven't moved forward with it is because you have large populations that are very powerful, like a lot of the Jewish populations, that are firmly against the vaccination and don't want to be involved with being vaccinated and have a lot of financial power. So once they can massage some of those communities some more and get them more okay with the vaccination, I think that's when they're going to start with the regulations.
Wow.
Well, I voluntarily did mine. So T, do you have anything else for our lovely, lovely guest?
No, I said this has been fun. This has actually been fun. Thank you so much for hanging with us, and we appreciate you. Tell everyone once again how to find you on social media and your channel once again.
It is Empowered Esquire TV. So it's Empowered, EMPOWERED, and then Esquire, ESQUIRE TV. You just type that in the search bar, it'll pop right up. There's no unique spellings or anything, And I'm usually live every Sunday. This week I did Monday, being that court was closed, and I actually had a, calm Monday it was the observation of July 4th. But usually I'm live every Sunday. And I want to also say thank you to the host of this lovely, lovely platform for inviting me. And I'm open to coming back if you guys would like. As I said, I appreciate you guys being so gracious. So I'm open to a quid pro quo.
I absolutely want you to come back. Like I said, we cover a number of topics over here. Hey, if you've watched any of the other content, we've been behaving ourselves. I don't think any F-bombs have been dropped. So but we do, and that was what kind of attracted me to what you were doing and wanted to bring you on the show, because we cover a lot of the same topics, and it was just very enlightening to get the actual legal side of it, the information side of it, whereas over here we have the opinion side of it. So to marry those two things together, I'd love to have you back on. We didn't even really get into T.I. and Tiny, which was originally why I reached out to you. But there's so many things to discuss. So absolutely, we'd love to have you back on.
All righty, sounds like a plan.
All right, hang on, don't disappear just yet. Hey, folks, thanks for watching. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do on unpopinshow.com. or follow us at Unpopin Show on all socials. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. You can find us.
And let us know what's unpopping with you. Leave what you think about the conversations down in the comments. We didn't touch on whether Bill Cosby was innocent or it was just overturned. Tell us what your thoughts are on that. And really, I want to hear what you think about why the community championed his conviction being overturned versus saying an injustice was put into play.
I thought you were going to say something else. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Nope. Peace. Thanks for checking out the Unpopular Opinion Show. If you like this content, make sure you like, subscribe, and smash the notification button down below so you can keep getting more from T-Storm and myself.
Yeah. More jokes coming on. No, they beeped. Damn it. Okay, fine.